Hi, everyone. Feel free if you'd like. This is my personal email, so if you want to take a picture or write it down, feel free. It's going to be the best way to contact me if you have any questions that, or maybe you need to think about something. This will be the best way to reach me over the summer. All right. Maybe we'll get started. I know it's the end of the day. Thanks, Rob. So I think I have to stand over in this area, correct? All right. I'm kind of a mover, so this will be really different for me. We're good? Okay, perfect. So if you see me like looking down, I just have some notes on my own like school computer because I want to make sure the information is really comprehensive and things like that. And you can always stop me if you have a very specific question. I am open, and I'll have there are like times built in. If you have any questions or reflections, there are 2 times I have built in. And I'll also stay at the end a little bit if there's something you'd like to ask me. So we'll get started. My name is Morgan Hendon. My pronouns are she, her. I am a teacher for students with visual impairments. You might hear us called be vision itinerants, TVIs, TSVIs, vision teachers. Sometimes we're called like vision specialists. But I really prefer just to be called like a vision itinerant teacher. It's kind of the role I'm in. And I also am an orientation and mobility specialist, so I provide not only like the vision part, but I also wear the hat of white cane instruction and mobility and things like that. So I do a lot of work with speech, OT, PT is a big one, and of course classroom teachers and things like that. So today we are here. I did a little editing. I'm currently taking a class, and I have that plug at the end if you're really curious. And my own learning, scientists and researchers and doctors are more leaning towards the term cortical cerebral visual impairment versus just cortical visual impairment cerebral. They're kind of using both, but often you'll see it referred to as CVI. So just to get like a little pulse, are people familiar with this? Is this your first time hearing about CVI? Let's see if like, sure, in the back. I'm going to give you the mic so the people on the Zoom. Great, just feel free to pass that around. Thanks so much.
Okay, so I know it has to do with high contrast, but that's about all I know. I'm thinking of like black and white, large, bold images.
You're thinking the right thoughts. You're probably wondering, why do your slides look like this, Morgan? Maybe you guys want to just hold the mic back there? Cool. We will talk on a lot of things. This is kind of just an overview, but CVI is researchers and doctors are estimating the leading cause of childhood blindness. They estimate, my class that I'm taking, a study found that they're estimating 1 in 30 children with a variety of medical diagnoses and things like that have this diagnosis. So currently I provide services to, oh, thank you. How's that, everyone? Perfect. I currently provide services direct and consult to roughly 10 students off the top of my head, all within varying phases of CVI, which we'll talk about a little bit. A little bit about me. I'm going to my 6th year teaching. I'm located in Evanston, Skokie area, District 65, right next to Northwestern. Like I said, I am an itinerant vision teacher, so I am traveling between 16 schools currently, providing services, as well as O&M. Sometimes you might see it referred to as O&M instead of just like orientation and mobility. Currently, with my CVI students in mind, I provide services to about 33 students with varying degrees of vision loss, including CVI. I'm currently married, and we are expecting our first child this November. So there's a lot going on for us. And yeah, I'm really excited to be here to kind of speak about the student that is also here. I'll move on to the next slide so everyone can see her. So leukodystrophy, Aoife is my only student, and in my 8 years of schooling and things like that, Aoife is my first student with leukodystrophy, so really learned a lot. So I have permission from Aoife to share this, and earlier my colleagues, Manisha Jain and Tempe Thomas, they are both speech therapists. They talked more in depth about Aoife and the assistive technology they're using for her communication. So that's a really good one to like go back and watch. I think it was called Fart Jokes, AAC for non-speaking, I think is the title of that. So it was really good because we've come a long way in communication, and that's our primary goal for Aoife, for sure. She wanted everyone to know she loves jokes, hanging out, TV shows, things like that. She is a part of 2 school bands, and she'll tell you with her device. I think I see Mom in the back making a face. She is a part of these bands with peers and staff at the school. So Aoife is well loved at Park School, is where she attends. It's like a therapeutic day school for students. And she is diagnosed with cortical cerebral visual impairment, currently functioning about phase 1, which we'll talk about a little bit. So that's Aoife, and we are really lucky at Park School. We have like a sensory room that is like dark, bubbles, lights, things like that. So that's where she and I are hanging out, and she has a big smile on her face because she's noticing the lights. Let me just... Okay. We're going to talk about CVI. This is a very, very unique vision diagnosis. Like I said, it is what researchers and doctors are estimating to be the leading cause of childhood blindness, but it's really hard to diagnose. So it's like a twofold. It's very, very unique. So if you look, I have linked here, like this is where I got my image from, but this is like a really in-depth article that kind of explores the brain and has scans. For me, even though I'm a vision teacher and we're very tactile based, I am definitely like a visual learner. So this image that we're looking at, that yellow arrow is pointing to, really can show how the brain is kind of functioning in terms of neurons and the brain synapses and things like that. So just to backtrack a little bit, CVI is a neurological visual impairment. It does not present as someone who maybe has something like retinitis pigmentosa, macular degeneration is a big one, retinopathy of prematurity. There are so many different vision diagnoses out there. CVI is happening in the brain. The structure of the eye often appears normal, not my favorite word, but that's how doctors tend to explain it. You've got the eye, then you've got the retina in the back of the eye, you've got your optic nerve, optic chiasm, and all that goes to the back of your brain. You've got 2 occipital lobes because you have 2 eyes. What CVI is that there's been damage that has occurred. Something traumatic has happened to the brain, whether at birth, during birth, after birth, things like that. It can be really hard to diagnose, like I said, because when you typically go to an eye doctor, they could be like, oh, well, everything seems to be looking, again, normal, right? The structure is there, right? Like there's a blink response, things like that. but have had parents and personal experience with students where we're like, something else is going on, right? You do need a diagnosis. So I, as a teacher, cannot diagnose, but there is a lot of vision screeners and things like that, which I would be happy to show at the end because they're on my work computer, from people like Dr. Dutton in Scotland. Dr. Christine Roman Lancey is a big pioneer in CVI. And it is more, I guess, of a like standardized way of showing your child or the person that you're with, their doctor, look, something's not really working together, and we would like to have a deeper dive, which is where the advocacy piece is critical. So yeah, I have that collaboration between like your child or the person that you know or suspect this is happening with, is going to be the best way to support the diagnosis. So moving into the image, the sighted control on the very left, it has a letter A. These are brain scans of like someone like me who has basically like 20/20 vision with correction. I wear contacts. You can see all the neural activity happening in the brain. So it's lit up. There's like green, blue, pinks, reds. So it's actually like facing towards the left. And so that is probably the right eye that you're seeing. And then all the neural activity going on. And then in the middle, you've got like ocular blindness. So this would be someone who was perhaps born either low vision with blindness. And like another plug is ocular blindness doesn't mean total blackness. I would say less than like 1 or 2% of people who are blind only see black. A lot of people have light perception, can see shadows, movements, things that sparkle. So that is kind of like a myth that maybe I think some people have. And then on the very, very left is cortical cerebral visual impairment. So you can see the neural activity is getting misplaced somewhere. It's not going directly to the brain to be processed. So there are 3 different types of phases, and this is from Dr. Christine Roman Lancey. Again, kind of a pioneer in this diagnosis, because it's still such a big conversation. So students often are assessed by TVIs, as well as ophthalmologists can provide a lot of good information. So there are 3 major phases. So phase 1 is going to be the most impacted of vision, where perhaps someone is only noticing light or movement, right? It can really have a significant impact on the ability to recognize things. So you've got visual attention, and then you've got visual recognition, and then you've got memory. It's kind of the hierarchy of how vision, from Dr. Dutton, how he explains vision and processing. So you need to notice something is there. Often students or children or people in phase 1 are maybe noticing like those lights, like you saw in the picture of my student Eva, very, very dark area, only noticing something very, very close up. And then you've got phase 2. So the really, really cool thing that I always like tell people about CVI is it will never fully resolve, but you can see an improvement in overall functional vision with the right intervention, accommodations, supports. That's where the advocacy piece is critical. So students can actually move into different phases, which is really amazing, and we do see that. So phase 2 would be like integrating that vision with function, looking at something, perhaps reaching for something, looking at something and like tracking it across like a variety of different fields. things like that. And then phase 3 is really where the brain is sort of refining things. And I have one student in phase 3, and for example, she is like, if she came into this room, she would not know how to actually get to the front of the room. So that's where you kind of see it, the ability to kind of navigate a space. So you can imagine coming in and you are totally blocking out like everyone on this side, because you're like, oh, there's something lit up, I'm gonna go this way. You can imagine if I'm here, there's lots of people, lots of like what we would say clutter. The chairs kind of look like the floor, the walls kind of look like the floor, right? People aren't speaking. So it can be really difficult for the brain to kind of say, okay, I'm here and I need to get there. So those are the 3 phases. And again, students can move as we see an improvement in vision. Where the intervention of like a TVI would come in conjunction with like OT, PT, speech, things like that. Super quick. I'm not gonna like read all of these, but there are visual behaviors associated with CVI. So these are from Perkins School for the Blind. Dr. Christine Roman Lancey has 10 of them that we use in our assessment piece, and they all combine. They're all kind of together. I really like the Perkins because it looks at different things. So like visual guidance of the upper and lower limbs, that is separate, whereas Dr. Roman Lancey's are kind of combined. So I feel like this just is like easier for me personally to read and say, okay, we're looking at all of these different areas. How are we supporting students and things like that? This is the link if you are really curious. It's from CVI Now through Perkins School for the Blind. And you can click on it and it'll take you. So all of these vision behaviors, it breaks them down with more information, and there are actually videos. And I've also linked a ton of resources, which I'm happy to show like one-on-one or like in a small group, because I feel like the sound might be a little bit, I think it's going to work a little bit better on my personal computer. Let me move this out of the way so you guys can see the bottom of that. So you've got, oops. The very last one says visual curiosity. So you've got visual recognition and visual curiosity. Oh, okay. I'm going to stop talking for a second. Are there any questions, reflections, anything anyone would like to share? Yes, please. We're gonna hand you a mic. And I'm going to take a drink of water.
Okay, so if so you mentioned or stressed that it's difficult to diagnose, but it wasn't clear to me, like, so how do they diagnose it then? Like, what does an ophthalmologist need to do?
It's a great question. In my experience, I'm going to plug the Chicago Lighthouse. I'm not sure if anyone has heard of that. It is a wonderful, wonderful place, and they have a very collaborative team and also ophthalmologists who specialize in cortical cerebral visual impairment. So, I have had families go to their ophthalmologist and ask for a referral or say, this is what we suspect. Who do you know? Larice Children's also has a great team that is very collaborative and will often talk to that child's vision teacher and team, and we will say, this is what we suspect. And so it's not like a visual acuity test, right? Like when I go to the eye doctor, I read the numbers and they're like, okay, like this is how we're going to correct your vision. Glasses and things like that are often given to children with CVI because they have other ocular or like eye things going on. So maybe some misalignment, maybe some astigmatism, which I also have. So they have very common vision diagnoses, but it is a very collaborative conversation, and we can say these are the areas that we are seeing impact in school, and that's sort of how we get that information to them. We also have a lot of release of informations so that doctors can speak directly to someone like me, and often we'll do like a call, like me and the child's teacher, PT and OT, because vision and OT go hand in hand a lot of times, as does PT if you are like ambulatory, right? So it's a great question, but I would definitely say the Chicago Lighthouse is probably one of the best that I have experienced, as well as Lurie's Children's for this diagnosis. Yeah. Absolutely.
So you have to gather data related to those items and then present that to the ophthalmologist.
Absolutely.
So it's not something that he's going to actually see inside their eye. Or
Correct. Even a brain
it's just
scan.
based on basically what you tell them.
Correct.
Okay.
Because it could be really frustrating if you are experiencing this and you're not able to express, this is what I see, right? That could be really, really frustrating. So we, and I would say like Dr. Dutton, like all of these forms, like Dr. Roman Lancy, it has a parent interview and questionnaire that is critical. That is like the first thing we do before we even walk in and observe and assess a student. We want to know, how is your child functioning in the morning? What are you noticing? Do they recognize you? Do they love the color red? That's why my slides are like black with like red and yellow, single colors. Do they have a favorite toy? Could they pick that toy out? Do they reach for that toy, or do they only reach for like their very preferred cup that they've had since birth? So those are all not red flags, but like information where we can say like, oh, okay, all right, and we can really push ophthalmologist for that. Or who do you know? Who do you know in this web of networks?
Okay, so as a follow-up question,
Yes.
is with my son, we're kind of coming at it from the opposite direction, where he had vision, he acutely lost vision, and the ophthalmologist said his the cord, optic nerve,
Yes.
that it was white. But then he said, but protect the eyes. You never know what can happen. So we started to notice that he was getting light sensitivity back.
Sure.
And then, 3.5 years after our initial appointment, we went back, and it was a different ophthalmologist who said the optic nerve was now like a faint pink color. So for us, we're trying to figure out, it's like the opposite, like not what can't he see, but what can he actually see, because we were coming from like complete blindness,
Absolutely.
no light sensitivity, but we're trying to, it's hard to figure out, well, what can he see?
Sure. I have some ideas. If you want to stick around, maybe 5 minutes, I have some ideas that you can try to kind of tease this out, and I can share with anyone who's interested. Like, this is like public information. I just have them saved on a file. It's like different screeners that you can say, this does kind of happen often, or I'm noticing this all the time, things like that. So I'd be happy to share that with you. And that way you can take that information to, you said you had a son, to his team and say, this is what we're noticing. So yeah, stick around if you have a few minutes. Cool. Any other questions? I think I only have, yes, I only have a video that I would love to show, but I would be happy if anyone has any like reflections or other thoughts.
Circles, squares, ending with a black or white background.
And then how were they
I'll give my microphone to this. We're having, for those remote people, we have a family here who's sharing their experience and a low vision specialist. So I'm just going to give my mic over.
So what they did is we spent 2 hours with the doctor. She went through different slides personally with Ellie and went side by side. Okay, well, she can't see this color. She can't see that color. She can see primary color. She can't see anything pastels. And once we got that diagnosis, we went to our team in our school, and that's all they work on is primary colors. And we don't do anything with pastels. We don't do anything that she can't see. And we start from one side of her brain or one side of her eye to the other for tracking, and we also have a light box and things like that.
So basically how she reacted, even though she didn't know she was being tested probably, she was able to like figure out what she could see and what she couldn't. Okay.
Thank you both. Just so you know, in public schools, you can always request it's called a functional vision assessment. And that's kind of like a key piece where the TVI who has, who's able to complete these can say, all right, well, these visual acuities, the color perception, tracking, like all of this appears really impacted, and they can take that to that team. But these behaviors, if you're noticing it, could be like a kind of like this family was speaking about, like their child only recognizing certain colors, light, things like that. Thank you both. All right, I have a video. Fingers crossed this will work. This is from CVI Scotland. They have some really amazing. I'm just gonna move. Oh no. Here we go. Let's see if this works. I think I have to unmute. Oh, there it is. I already had it up. Okay. So this is a video of someone with cortical cerebral visual impairment and also kind of a dorsal stream impairment. We all have a dorsal and a ventral stream. And the people who created this video worked in conjunction with like these CVI stakeholders who were able to express to other people what they were seeing. And so this is the video that kind of shows how the eyes and the brain are working. And I just think it's a really cool video. I never get tired of watching it. So I'm gonna, fingers crossed it works. Okay, hopefully it's not too loud. All right, I have unmuted Rob. I think you're muted. Great. Okay, let's try this. Hopefully there's no feedback. Okay. Here we go, full screen.
The short films you're about to see are our attempt to illustrate how it might be to see the world with cerebral visual impairment. This is a condition where parts of the brain important for the creation of conscious vision do not work properly. The effects applied to the videos are based on feedback from people with cerebral visual impairment and their carers, as well as contributions from experts working in this field. Almost half of the brain is used to create vision. Information is collected by the eyes at the front, and it travels to the back of the brain, to the occipital lobes. Processing initially occurs in the occipital lobes, and then information then travels in two different streams, one to the temporal lobes and one to the parietal lobes. The temporal lobes are the area of the brain which store visual memory, and the parietal lobes are the bit of the brain which allow us to appraise the overall visual scene and see one thing amongst many. It also helps aid visually directed movement. If the posterior parietal lobes are damaged, then it can be hard to see one thing amongst many. It's also difficult to reach for things accurately and find things amongst clutter. Together, these difficulties are often termed dorsal stream dysfunction. Posterior parietal lobe damage and consequently dorsal stream dysfunction is a common form of cerebral visual impairment, especially amongst children. It can be very disabling, but if it is recognised and habilitative measures taken, the challenge of dorsal stream dysfunction can be lessened. Because it's hard to describe clearly in words what these difficulties look like, we have created these short films. The first film shows a person moving across a clear, open beach. Vision appears almost typical, until the people and their dogs come into view. Then how much can be seen reduces. They can see only one or two things at a time, with the peripheral visual world disappearing and the central window of sight narrowing and fluctuating. Once the complexity of the visual scene reduces and the people and dogs are left behind, and back into an open landscape, the visual experience becomes more typical. The next film is the same scene, but without the filter. Think about your vision as the people, chair and dogs come into view. Can you still see the trees on the right and the hill on the left? Can you see a person, the chair and the dog all at the same time? The people with dorsal stream dysfunction could not. Looking again at the first film, the filter hides so it is not seen by people with dorsal stream dysfunction. Walking on the open beach, the vision parts of the brain have less information to deal with and map. As soon as the people are seen, the brain needs to start mapping and remapping. As they get even closer, there is more to make sense of. This overloads the capacity of the brain and the central visual window narrows. When back in the open, there's less to map. The window of vision gets bigger and becomes much more typical again.
So it might have been a little bit hard to hear, so I apologize about that. But I can definitely share any and all information if you're really curious. And just so you know, I went back in my slides to clarify. Like researchers are saying, like the dorsal stream, like that pathway is like the action pathway, right? So the ability to like notice things happening outside of you and also to put an action with that. So to walk towards something, to move towards something, to reach towards something. Let's see. Whereas like the ventral, I just want to make sure I was saying this correctly. The ventral, because it can be really confusing. The ventral stream is like the where. So like, where is it and how am I going to get to it? So we're always like working in conjunction. Like I can see the door back there. I would know how to get there and I would know how to open it. So you can see how like having a dorsal stream or cortical cerebral visual impairment would impact your whole day. And your ability to kind of navigate spaces, especially unfamiliar spaces and very cluttered and busy like this room. Here are a ton of resources for my slideshow today that I pulled from. The ones that are in blue, you can click on them and they're like articles and videos and things like that. And then I have some YouTube resources. So Dr. Gordon Dutton, Dr. Marabay has some really great like TED Talks out there. Dr. Christine Roman Lance, you can just like put these people into Google and so many videos will show up. Matt Tiazian, he is also stepping into the field with more assessments and things like that. And Perkins School for the Blind. So this video goes even more in depth. It's like an hour long, I think. And it just talks about CVI, the hierarchy, people's experiences, accommodation, support, like where do we go from here? It's a really great overview. And I thought it was really wonderful. I just completed it like 2 weeks ago, so I wanted to put it in there. That is all I have. I really appreciate everyone coming. I know it's the end of the day on a Saturday. A lot of information that was out there. Some really cool presenters. I think these are being recorded and they're going to be up. So, but if you're here and you're like, oh, can you share your slideshow? I absolutely can. I'm just going to take my student out of it before I share it out to people. So I'll just go back to the resources and I'll hang out unless there's a question for the group. Please.
So I live in rural Georgia, not near any big cities. We received our son's diagnosis in Pittsburgh. He has cortical visual impairment as part of his disease. So we don't know what he sees. Sometimes we feel like he's seeing good. Sometimes we feel like he's not.
It's like fluctuating, I
Right.
think is
And
the word.
He's had the VEP testing, and so there's not a whole lot of response there. So like, for all intents and purposes, they're telling us he's blind, and we brought him back home, and our school, it's very small. The school system, they don't really have TVI on staff. They don't have anybody that dealt with cortical visual impairment. There's no vision therapist around our area. I was just wondering, number one, what suggestions you might have, and number two, maybe what type of accommodations are the school required to give our child?
Yeah.
Because so far it's been things like stuff he can touch, but he doesn't
Like a tactile, yeah.
right, but he doesn't have his fine motor skills are terrible. I mean, he can hardly lift his arm,
Mm-hmm.
so he's not really getting anything out of it.
Sure.
So we don't know what to do. We don't know if we need to move.
Sure.
I mean,
Yeah.
we just don't know. He has a great OT, PT, speech therapist,
Great.
but no vision therapist. So
Sure.
just
Sure.
would like to hear your thoughts and
Yeah.
things we might should look into.
Uh-huh.
Or
It's
if
a
there's any services that we can do.
Sure. Yeah, I'm like racking my brain. Just so you know, I'm actually from Alabama. So I grew up very close to Georgia. I've still got family down there. I definitely recognize Illinois where we are. Evanston, where I live and teach, is right next to Chicago. Like it's like a stepping stone. So recognizing and validating that the resources are not equitable state to state, for sure. So you've got the diagnosis. Because there are schools for the deaf and blind, correct, in Georgia? Sure. Right. Exactly. Let me think about this. Maybe, is it a public school, just to clarify? Yeah. Sure.
We couldn't get a one-on-one qualified nurse to help take care of him while he was at school. So it's kind of a bad situation.
It's really tough.
We would love for him to be there because we know he could get so much out of it.
Right. It's a
socially
social.
and-
Oh, for sure.
And he's smart as a whip.
Yeah.
He can name off 150 dinosaurs and what they look
Okay.
like. So he's very intelligent. It's just hard.
Very hard. Very hard. And I unfortunately don't have like that answer for you guys. I could talk to you if you've got time after this. I know it's like almost 5:30, 5:15 on a Saturday. I know it's been a long day, but I would be happy to tell you the process of how the IEP looks in a public school setting. Because IEPs are legal documents and they have to be followed in a way such as domains, eligibility, and you've actually already got the vision diagnosis of CVI. So that is a critical piece that you guys have already done. So yeah, if you want to stick around, we can kind of chat. I can tell you kind of my experience, and maybe that'll help guide you guys, because it's really tough. It's really tough, and it's not equitable in terms of where you live, your household, who is advocating for you, can be really, really hard. So thank you for your questions and your thoughts and your reflections. Anybody else before We thank you guys for sharing your experience with Ellie and her very cute penguin blankets. If you're interested, I can share this with you, this slide, or if you want to take a picture, I'll leave this up. But yeah, that's pretty much it.